Dwell in the end, and you will hurt no one. This is the title of today's discussion regarding quotes from Neville Goddard to articulate the concept of the already created and complete reality, and that all things are done, and we choose what is done unto and through us, as well as shattering delusions. One of the things that I learned on this journey, and in retrospect, makes even more sense today, which is why Steve Jobs talked about connecting the dots looking backwards, is the realization when I was in my mid-20s working on a IT certification for my corporate job. During that time, I was in deep study and reflection on internetworking, which is a form of technology. And during that time, I was reading some books on spirituality. Now, the interesting thing was I found a lot of parallels. Okay, this was back in 2004, 2005. Parallels between technology and what was being discussed in spirituality. Now, fast forward many years later, in retrospect of growing my IT business, I realized that on the journey of growing my IT business, I was noticing that I was seeing things with my vision in my imagination that exists today as far as technology goes. Now, I followed these hunches and inspirations and these visions and used them to create success in my IT business. I also realized that many of these technologies that I saw in my imagination are in existence today. And I also see many more technologies that are going to be part of the future. Now, is it that we are creating the future based on what is in our imagination? Or more accurately put, we are revealing the future based on what is in our imagination, and we can choose to play the role as entrepreneurs to bring forth what is in the unseen reality into existence. Many tech entrepreneurs that I met during my journey seem to be very detached from the five sensory world and lived in their imagination. And as a result of living in their imagination, which was the vision that they revealed from the unseen reality that they knew will one day be seen in the external, concrete, tangible, five sensory reality, they lived in their vision and thus was able to create success in their business. They did not allow five sensory data that seemed to be contrarian to the vision, that seemed to cause reactivity in others, to hold them back. This brought me into deeper levels of understanding that so much of what Neville spoke of, or what was discussed in early spiritual books, was describing what already exists. And one of the greatest things that was spoken about is that everything is already complete. It is akin to having in your imagination an ability to query an entire database of websites and selecting in your imagination the exact website that you want to go to. Now, this is very relatable because we have this technology nowadays. And thousands of years ago, because we did not have the words to reference, it was not discussed from that perspective, so they spoke about it in different ways. So today we can say that imagination is akin to going on Google and searching for a website. Now, when you find this website based on your query, you can click on the link and go to the exact website and then browse the contents. You can have the experience. This is how our imagination works. We are querying the already complete reality. It's already complete. Everything is done. Now, we're so used to imagining or believing things to be based on past, present, and future. We have to remember that everything exists right now in the eternal now. And what creates a separation or a gap or convolution on the journey is after selecting that which we consciously choose in our imagination, what we want to experience, we react to the delusions of the past. the outer world interpretations based on assumption within of people, environment, circumstance, and information. Thus, we need to practice not being reactive, because that would be akin to searching for a website, clicking the link, and then trying to stop the screen from externalizing into the website, to, in a delusional way, go into another website, even though we consciously chose a different website. Now that's how it works. We select in our imagination the experience that already exists, and we move down what Neville calls a bridge of incidents to the realization and the fulfillment of that experience. This bridge of incidents is akin to all the technological things that occur between selecting the website and experiencing the website. Now, because we're so used to doing things a certain way, we find it hard to believe. So thus, we practice the art and process, selecting from our imagination and dwelling in the end, to have certain experiences that transcend the linear utilization of time and space that are based on past assumptions. He says, but I'll tell you one thing. Do not concern yourself with the means. Always go to the end. Dwell in the end, and you will hurt no one. But if you try to devise the means, you are, well, messing the whole thing up. In other words, we're trying to force things to change, when instead we need to be allowing things to change, to reflect that which we desire to see in our imagination. So in the journey for creating success in entrepreneurship by using this particular form of methodology, we allow the signs, the synchronicities, the hunches, and inspirations to guide us rather than trying to create based on other states of mind in which we interpret certain information learned from others. I always say this, there are many ways to create success. And the way to create success that is the one that is in most harmony will be revealed to you via your inner voice connection or intuition. You know the answer. This is why we have to learn to trust ourselves and listen to ourselves. If we're constantly listening to the opinions of others, then what this really means is we're binding ourselves to certain interpretations that may not be relevant to what we desire to see brought forth in the way we desire to see it brought forth. He says, if faith is not complete until, through experiment, it becomes experience. You must take an unseen objective and place it in assemblage of mental states which would imply its fulfillment. So what is the end result? And what does it look like if it was true? We go into our imagination and we imagine ourselves utilizing the five senses in our imagination. This is how we select that experience, akin to a website. When we select that experience, reality has changed. It is done. We will get a sensation of it is done. And as you open up your eyes, you'll see what you've always seen around you. However, everything is changing and bringing you to the fulfillment of that particular experience. Now, this can be challenging to a mind that is overly identified by doing things from a place of force. So what we do is go through a journey of changing how we relate to people, environment, circumstance, and information based on how it actually is in regards and in relation to that which we desire to experience. We change all the meaning around to this outer world to reflect, and the meaning is found within. We don't have to go and search for the meaning. Our inner voice conversation and hunches, signs and synchronicities reveal the true meaning. Then this desire must be activated by entering into its center, feeling its reality, and walking in faith that it will happen. So entering its center in the imagination, feeling its reality. When the reality is felt in the imagination, just like how for many years I've worked with affirmations, I experience the sensation of it is done. As mentioned all throughout my videos, I learned about this information through Think and Grow Rich using the autosuggestion principle. Now, upon connecting the dots looking backwards, I realized that it was through the autosuggestion that I selected the desired outcome and experienced it in my life as getting out of $50,000 debt, developing a high level of success in corporate, buying my first house, which was the exact house that I wanted, building and growing my IT business to success, experiencing relationships, friendships, life experiences, all kinds of different experiences that I consciously desired. I had used the principle of autosuggestion, and I have found that the principle that Neville speaks of, which was imagining in your mind's eye the exact scene, is also selecting that experience from the already complete reality, and thus then switching from the it is done sensation into that reality to experience everything, even though it may appear to be the same right now. But you might find that there is 5 sensory data that denies that particular assumption, which we can release by changing our beliefs, assumptions, otherwise what we call disempowering programming, and then bringing us to a joy-based or a flow-based realization to that particular destination. He says, I tell you, in a way that could not devise, what you have assumed will come into your world. So, as stated, I've worked with many different entrepreneurs, consulting, coaching, and just having a lot of friends in the entrepreneurial space. And I've noticed the difference between entrepreneurs that create the success from a place of flow versus entrepreneurs that create success from a place of force, and those that don't experience success. It has everything to do with A, had they had selected that state of mind and gone into it, and number 2, do they persist in the assumption that they actually already are that which they have imagined to be? And number 3, how embracing are they that all the 5 sensory data, people, environment, circumstance, and information, interpretation, is actually revealing the pathway, as well as their connection to their inner voice and intuition and their ability to transcend the meaning of the 5 sensory data. Now, it does not imply that one needs to do this, but one of the things that I always talk about for entrepreneurs is that you can create the success from a place of flow rather than a place of force. If you had to choose between the two, why would you choose force? All that implies that you would choose flow versus force, or a very joyous base journey to the destination, is that you would put off what Neville calls the former conversation, which was the conversation of the old self from the previous state that was prior to selecting the ideal outcome that you desired and thus entered a new state. I tell you, in a way that you do not know and you could not possibly devise, you will be led across a bridge of incidents to the fulfillment of that state. So notice how, when he communicates this, he's saying, you could not possibly devise. Now, when I look at the results that I've created as a result of those experiences that I've had in retrospect, I realized that I had to do things from an intuitive way. The 5 sensory data, people, information would say things to me, and I had to not listen to that information. I had to disregard it. Not all of it, but what I intuitively knew that was not in harmony and that was not valid. Now, this can take a certain level of confidence. However, when you realize the depths of your being, it's very easy to allow the confidence to happen through you. Through practice, we will release from what we call the delusions, which is identification of past programming that causes us to identify with certain concepts of ourselves, as well as identification with experiences of the 5 sensory world, our interpretation, disempowering of the people, environment, circumstance, and information that presents itself on the bridge of incidents. All you have to do is ignore the evidence of your outer senses and go about your own wonderful business, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, Neville says. Now, when he says ignore the evidence of your outer senses, we're talking about disempowering information that is presented in the outer world, which is interpretation from within. If you identify with that information that disempowers, you'll notice that you'll become reactive. Our goal is to release from reactivity and bring us into a state of mind of affirmation, knowing that everything is related and in contribution to what we desire to create. And if needed, we will be inspired to states of mind which we call proactivity. We will know what to do, when to do it, why to do it, and how to do it. Now, this can be experienced challenging on the journey. What I found is benefiting from releasing disempowering programming in relation to myself and the outer world, and aligning myself to how it actually is, has created a greater ability to remain in flow and what I would call autotelic, which is otherwise known as divine will, which is when you select the state of mind, you flow and autotelic, everything happens in what we would call the right time, the right place. You know what to say, know what to do, more so each day to the fulfillment of what we desire to experience. So thus, you have more confidence, you have more what he would call faith, and you have more understanding that what you had done in your imagination was the act of faith, and the act of faith selected the experience. And now everything on the journey is part of the experience of the fulfillment of that particular experience. So you're one with it. You otherwise experience what we call being present to the eternal now. We're not running away from it. We're present to the eternal now, which means we're not living in past assumptions of how we believe reality to work that seem to deny or cause reactivity in relation to what we want to experience, or we're not dwelling in some ideas in the future of doubt-based programming that assumes that whatever is being experienced in the now through our inner conversations is denying that core assumption that we already are, and we are on the journey to fulfillment and experiencing that which we desire to see brought forth. Your assumptions, instead of receding into the past, will advance in the future, and you will walk into its fulfillment. So there will be things that you do, experiences that you have, outer world circumstance changing on its own. You'll go about your day-to-day, you'll know what to do, when to do, why to do, and you'll do it from a place of flow and walk into its fulfillment. Now, this is far different than creating from a place of force or creating from a place of trying to control the outer world. Both of them, in a way, work with the imagination. However, what we're doing here is we're simplifying. We're realizing that it is already complete, and we are dwelling in the end by allowing from within. He says, I hope you will take me seriously, as there is no other foundation. You need not be born into a certain nation, race, or religion, belief, to experience your desire. You can become the lady or gentleman you want to be by standing on the only foundation. Many successful people had no social, financial, or political foundation to get them where they are. They simply believed in themselves. They imagined that they were what they wanted to be by living as though they were. Now, once you've gone in your imagination, you have selected it, you've already become that which you have selected in your imagination. Allow yourself to release from the disempowering programming on the journey, and you will find that the hunches and inspirations, signs and synchronicities will flow. Things will start to change on their own, and you will also feel the compelling nature to act in contribution, should that be the case. This is all from a state of mind which we would call allowing. Then, in a way, no one could devise, their assumptions externalize themselves. So what is this? We are externalizing on the screen of space, the experience from the world within. What is in the world within? What we assume, what we believe to be true, our ideas about ourselves in relation to the five sensory data. And all of that stuff is invisible. We can change it. And we want to encourage certain belief systems that enable us to change it. Which, upon working deep with the subconscious mind work, I realized that I could change any belief and assumption about myself and experience it to be accurately true. For example, in the entrepreneurial journey, I came across a lot of information that was saying you had to do things a certain way to produce results. Much of that information didn't resonate with me, and I realized that it was the information that was brought forth based on success created by others. I realized that I was able to find the information within which may be cross-referenced into certain kinds of marketing, selling, operational, business building strategies that seem to have principle-based parallels. But however, I did it in a way that was found via my inner voice and inner guidance from within, and produced the results. And when I would talk about it, people would try to put it in a category where they would relate it to what they read in a book of what somebody else said. Then I realized that I had an assumption within that said that information was presented a certain way in the outer world, and that I was the one that was creating these assumptions within. So I assumed it to be a certain way. I transcended it by doing it what we would say is my own way, but it is not my own way. It is coming from within. We call this divine will. And then the results happen. Thus, then I was able to see the contrast between the successes of others or the lack of successes and find the core connections of authentic truth, which is that there are infinite ways of bringing forth success, and we can be inspired by the information that we learn from books, training, seminars, and so forth. But we do not want to create the assumption that those are the only ways. Because from my experience, when I assumed that those were the only ways, I was trying to force that which I desired to see brought forth, which was my entrepreneurial success, through those particular processes or systems, marketing systems, selling systems, operational systems, business building systems. And while they have worked for others, and many others, I realized that by doing it the way that was found within, through my hunches and inspirations, I was able to transcend certain limitations that those systems found themselves rigid to, such as, in 2009, building my business during a time of recession. When certain environmental changes occur, I would still be able to bring in the clients and bring in whatever it is that I needed to produce the success. I transcended those variables that occurred in what we would call outer world circumstances that many people believe in. As you believe, so it shall be done unto you. Now, why is this true? As he talks about here, your three-dimensional being may think it cannot be now, but your fourth-dimensional mind knows it already is. So the desire should be accepted by you as a physical fact now. The three-dimensional being has been identified with the five sensory data and this physical body experience. The truth is, we have a physical body. When we realize that we transcend the body, we go into what is called fourth-dimensional thinking, which is that reality is an externalization of our assumptions and beliefs within. All things are possible to him that believeth. All of creation is already complete, and as you believe, shall it be done unto you. So this is what we would call a very empowering state of mind, because then we can change our beliefs and assumptions and observe as reality changes. So what happens when we realize that it is done? Well, as he says here, now you have friends. They know your present position and the conditions that surround you. In other words, once you have gone into that which you have selected in your imagination, even though reality looks the same, you've gone into a different reality. And now the people are reflecting how to navigate you towards that destination, as well as you are helping them navigate to what would appear as their destination. So they may appear the same through the three-dimensional world, understanding, but to the fourth dimensional world, you actually are in a different world, the world that is in harmony of the fulfillment of what you desire to experience. Now, this can be challenging to grasp in the beginning, but let's look at what this means. He says, now you have friends. They know your present position and the conditions that surround you. That means all people reveal to you in contribution. This is why we say, love thy neighbor. We are to love each other as we love ourselves, because everybody is our teacher. We are the teacher and the student, and they are the teacher and the student, which is why I always recommend the philosophy that I learned back in the days and I continuously stick to, that the most important person in your life is the person in front of you right now, because they are the most revealing. Revealing to what? Who you are, your assumptions within, and the pathway to the destination. If they are not as you would like them to be, let your friends know, not verbally or outwardly, but in your imagination. So see them in relation and in contribution to your dream, to your vision, that which you desire to see brought forth, by changing your assumptions about yourself in relation to them, and changing your assumptions about them. For example, in the entrepreneurial space, part of the journey might involve building a team, acquiring clients, putting yourself out there, and advertising or marketing, or whatever shape or form of plan that will be revealed from the world within. On the journey, you may find yourself interacting with people. When you interact with them, do you see them as you, as in revealing who you are? Or do you see them as conflict? What kind of beliefs and assumptions can you receive from the world within, or be inspired from the outer world to change your identification within of how you interpret them? As you do this, you'll notice that they will change. They will be collaborative. They will be supportive. They will be harmonious. He says, see them seeing you as they would have to see you. The day after they know things are just as you want them to be. Then wait in confidence for your ways to open that you could not devise. When you change your assumption about people, when you change the way you relate to them, and they come back to you, and then they have changed, do you know the ways that they have gone through that brought them into this change? Could you have possibly devised these means? A lot of times you'll find that you could not have. This is how it works. Now, when they show up, they'll come with a story. If you ask them, how did they come to that conclusion, or how did they go through that change? What you'll notice is that they will have their own meaning and story. None of that you need to worry about or concern yourself with, unless you want to deeply reflect upon how this kind of stuff works and bring forth more conscious awareness on the subconscious. All you really have to do to make your journey as joyous as the destination, that which you desire to experience, is to change your assumptions about them to one of harmony, benefit for you, them, divine, and evolution. No one knows how or when it will happen, but it will. You will find yourself walking across some bridge of incidents that you did not consciously devise, which takes you to your freedom, whatever that end may be. So the friends are not just people. This is also information, circumstance, and environment. Anything in this external reality, anything in the five-sensory reality is the friend. I remember when I was starting in corporate, just about a couple months before starting in corporate, and I got into corporate by believing that it was possible because I didn't have university. I started in corporate at the very young age of almost 21 years old. And what I realized was that I believed it. I just knew I was going to get in. Now, a month or so leading up to it, and this was back in 2000, 1999, 2000, a man came up to me in my life and we became friends. And after this particular experience, he was no longer there. We had many deep conversations, and he seemed very wise, and he taught me a lot of things. People tend to show up just out of the blue, just like that, as teachers. They are both students and teachers because he saw me as also a teacher, teaching him about certain things, which reminded him of his experience as he moved up to a high level of success in his position, moved up to chief executive officer in his company. And he said to me, he said, "What is the greatest thing that you can do in your life?" And, I had my opinions of what it was back then. And he shared with me his opinion. He says, the greatest thing you can do in life is to turn an enemy into a friend. Now, when I heard that, I thought I understood what he meant. And over the years, I kept meditating upon it, thinking that I understood what it meant. And then I realized that more so each day, and that was probably close to 20 years ago, I am still realizing that the greatest thing that I could do is turn an enemy into friend on the journey to the fulfillment of what I desire to experience. Seeing that whatever shows up, people, environment, circumstance, and information reveals to me about myself, and I can change how I assume them to be to create a more joyous journey to the destination. This is why he looked like everything happened through him and unto him, and he was in complete flow. Because he knew that he was going to get to the destination, but he didn't want to get to destination from a place of force and frustration. Now, blessed for me, I have been in talks with many entrepreneurs, high-level executives. I met John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, and had a great conversation with him. And I've met many entrepreneurs, CEOs that have created success from a place of flow and things happening unto and through them. And they got to their destination, high level of success, joyously. Then I've seen others that have gotten to the destination as well, from a place of force. They got there stressed out and frustrated. Thus, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to be inspired by those that got there from a place of flow and one of joyousness. And I realized that the way that they did it, they all got to the destination. It was done. The way that I chose to go to the destination is more and more so each day converting within myself the assumptions I have about people, environment, circumstance, and information to the best of my ability. I don't have to force myself doing it. I don't have to do it all the time. But I can make the journey more joyous by changing how I assume people, environment, circumstance, and information to be and observe change. He says, so this is what I mean by faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. You hope for it? Well, now, the assurance is faith. Faith is not going to make it so. Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. As in all things exist, all of creation is complete. Loyalty to the unseen reality. Well, now, that's unseen by mortal eye. Now, you remain loyal to that unseen reality and see how this bridge of incidents is woven, and you do not consciously devise it. No man can consciously devise the incidents necessary to lead you to the fulfillment of what you've done. Well, this is what I mean by faith. The very substance of what the world calls real is unseen. It's unseen reality. One of the goals is to shatter delusions, to remove the disempowering beliefs and assumptions that we have about ourselves in relation to people, environment, circumstance, and information, ourselves, and befriend. On the other side of doubt is assurance. Always remember this. On the other side of doubt is assurance. When you release the doubt, you have further assurance. He says, but God in you is the Father. He will lead you through unnumbered experiences and take you into an experience that you could never consciously devise and shatter your delusions. See, I always say this. To see the journey as valuable as the destination. What's happening on the journey? The delusions of how reality works are being shattered. Reflect upon it. Take a moment and reflect upon your own journey and realize that what was happening was the delusions were being shattered. The identification of doubt was being released. And you begin to see things for how they really are, which are in alignment with who you really are. Being the person who you already are as a result of affirming it is simple. Okay, we do the act in our mind, which is selecting from the already complete reality in our imagination, knowing that it is done. And on the journey, the bridge of incidence, unnecessary complexity results in the ignorance of the law of assumption and self-delusion. What are we assuming on the journey? When we have forgotten the former conversation of the past self, we become a mirror in which the true external reality which represents our chosen state is faultlessly reflected. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.